morning to you all. Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Mr. Managing Director, Honorable Ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, venerable religious leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Last year this time, we were all inspired and touched by Abdurrahman Toure's presence in this meeting. He will always be with us in spirit, even if he's not here today. Ladies and gentlemen, TAFCON provides a forum for the exchange of ideas, for learning, and for also looking at how we look at the contemporary issues affecting the Gambia and how to look at solutions to take the Gambia forward. Looking for homegrown solutions, but also looking for ways and means of learning from what is happening around us. And it is in that regard that we have today's keynote speaker, Cherno Gaye, who will be giving us his perspectives on what is happening in Rwanda and how it is we can learn from that Rwandan experience. Let me just say a few words to introduce Cherno, who is currently the Managing Director of Cogebanque, one of the leading commercial banks in Rwanda, which has an asset base of over $230 million. He's a Chartered Financial Analyst, and he is also from the Institute of Charlottesville USA and the one in South Africa. This is a globally recognized designation and the gold standard for the investment industry. Cherno is also a fellow member of the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants of the United Kingdom. He has held a number of CEO and CFO roles in Rwanda. He's worked in the Gambia before also, working in Maersk, in Deloitte and Touche, and also in KPMG. He sits on several boards in Rwanda, and it is really a pleasure for us to have him here to share his perspectives and to give us some insights which will be very useful as we move forward in this meeting today. Cherno, welcome.
Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, religious leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow Gambians. I'm extremely delighted to be with you here this morning. First and foremost, I take this opportunity to thank Mr. Gaye profusely for giving me the opportunity to be keynote speaker today. I also equally thank him for organizing an initiative like this. Suffice it to say that I've already seen people that I've not seen for ages. Not only is he an illustrious son of Gambia and Africa at large, he is also a prodigy of great values. I have a lot of respect for him. His role in the national building process is very laudable and very much in evidence. In fact, I can say that his journey extends beyond the Gambia, and I can tell you also that TAF Global recently registered a company in Rwanda. When Mr. Gaye asked me a couple of months ago to be keynote speaker, I felt highly challenged, and I guess you know why. And the truth of the matter is that in the course of my day-to-day work, I normally meet large audiences like this, but I believe that the format is extremely different for a number of reasons. One thing I firmly believe in is that whenever you rise to speak or to write about something that is already covered by existing literature, you want to really talk about things that would add value, things that are actually incremental, not just to say things that are already, I can say, maybe readily accessible and readily available in the public domain. And secondly also, I believe that it has to be a topic that is very relevant, and especially where we are now in the country. It's something that should be very relevant, and after all, you don't really want to waste people's time by talking about things that really nobody wants to hear about. And also, Thirdly, something that always disturbs me is the fact that nowadays, ideas, or even an idea that may sound very brilliant today, would sound daft in hindsight. You could talk about something today, and then tomorrow it will look like something that really nobody wants to hear again. So that's why I think when it comes to speaking and writing, we have to be very careful what we write about and what we speak about. So that really gave me a very significant challenge. And I said, now, what do I do? How do I go about this? But in the final analysis, I realized that the harm was already done. I've already committed, so I had to just bite the bullet and get on to the business of the day. And here I am. Now, but I thought maybe this is an opportunity for me to talk about certain things that I thought have been really troubling me for some time, and also to offer perspectives about things that I have learned over the course of the years. I've been away for over 12 years now in Rwanda, and I think there is always a room for us to grow, for us to improve, for us to learn from one another. And there are experiences that we can always share. Nobody says that one is perfect and the other is not. It's just a question of what good things can we learn from one another. So I intend to really talk about those things and also try to ignite certain discussions that I think we need to be having on an ongoing basis as a country. Now, one of the first things that I would like to talk about is income inequality. Now, income inequality is still very high in Africa. And if you drive through the countryside, it doesn't take much to see that there are lots of people who are very hardworking. We see a lot of hardworking people working very hard, but the fact of the matter is they see very little reward for their hard work. But not only do you see hardworking people, you also see people living in abject poverty. A good measure of income inequality is the Gini coefficient, which really looks at the extent to which incomes are unequal, i.e. from 0 to 1, meaning 0 is perfect equality, meaning incomes are the same, equal, and 1 means perfect inequality. Now, countries, of course, range between the two extremes, 0 and 1. The closer, of course, to 0, the better. Now, but one question that I always ask is, what are we really doing about income inequality? Or rather, are we really doing enough to close the gap? And for me, I find this thing very worrying. And I will tell you why. As I said earlier, I've been living in Rwanda for the last 12 years, over 12 years now. This is a country that suffered a huge tragedy in 1994. The country was completely destroyed. I'm sure you've heard about the horrifying stories about the genocide against the Tutsis. Today, the country has been rebuilt beyond recognition. It doesn't take much to see where Rwanda is. I mean, I receive Gambians every 2-3 weeks coming to Rwanda to see, for various things. Even recently, we had this AU parliament that was hosted in Rwanda where 5 parliamentarians were in the country. But I can tell you that if you see where the country is today, it is beyond recognition. But one discussion that I always have with Rwandans is, for this country to be liberated, it took a great deal of sacrifice. People put their lives at risk. Some people died. Some people take inordinate amount of risk to liberate the country. Now, those people who died, for instance, or those people who sacrificed, put their life at stake, when they see Rwandans, for instance, carrying on with their day-to-day business, are they really going to be proud to have made those sacrifices? i.e., are they living the life that makes those sacrifices warranted in the first place? And I guess we can also ask the same question here. Because the freedom, the liberty, peace we are enjoying today is all because of sacrifices people made in the past. the living and the dead. Now, these sacrifices and efforts were made for us to enjoy and continue. Were made to enjoy and for everybody, for all the Gambians to enjoy, not for some to enjoy and then others to suffer. Now, this brings me back to the subject of income equality, which is really what I'm trying to nail here. Because if Gambia belongs to all Gambians, we should really do much more than what we are doing today to make sure that those who are living in abject poverty are actually lifted out of poverty. Now, I believe that there are lots of areas that we are currently overlooking, which it's high time that we found a solution to and act accordingly. One of the areas is that if I look at, for instance, some of the professions, like, for example, those in the security service, those in education, the way we actually remunerate their services, it really leaves very much to be desired. Because, come to think of it, for us to be here where we are today, for us to be able to run businesses, for us to be able to create value, some people do a lot of work to create a very safe and conducive environment for us to be able to do that. But how do we really look after these people? Suffice it to say that what we are doing really is not enough in relation to the services that the valuable services that they are offering to society at the moment. Another area is, if you look at our natural resources, for example, they belong to all Gambians. Now, how do we distribute the natural resources in such a way that everybody has a fair share? Let me give you an example. If, for example, today, you buy a house somewhere along, let's say in the middle of nowhere, and then government tomorrow decides to put a road and things like that, and the value of the property goes up. Now, what we need to understand is that you own a plot, the value goes up, but what have you really done to increase the value of that plot? And the answer is nothing. So government has really made it possible, or somebody has made it possible for that value to increase. Now, how do we make sure that the tax system we have is designed in such a way that when these things happen, we distribute the wealth that is created in an equitable way? Now, this is something that really we should see as food for thought. The windfall that we get from all these things should be shared in such a way that the poorest of the poor are really looked after very well. I think it's high time. This reminds me of a saying, something that John F. Kennedy once said, that if a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. If we really continue to have abject poverty, even the ones who are rich will be at risk. Because clearly what it means is that we cannot have a stable society. Now, another area that I would really like to explore is also the role of women in the national development agenda, and more specifically in the governance process. I know that this may sound obvious. Everybody talks about it every now and then, every forum, every international forum, national forum, people talk about the role of women. But I still believe that it is still a lip service. We are really not doing enough. And in this day and age, when we are still talking about shortage of skills, I can see as part of the panel discussions, we'll be addressing the issue of shortage of skills and things like that. And yet we have a low-hanging fruit that we are not really capitalizing on that much. So it's high time we see what to do about it. And I believe that the solution also has to start from the households. Women's role in creating a stable and a very solid home is still undervalued, in my view. I think we in our respective homes, we really allow boys to have it very easy. When it comes to chores, it's always easy to call your daughter to say, and say, okay, do X, Y, Z, when the boys are just sitting there and doing nothing. And we know clearly what that means is that it actually retards their progress. And also, by implication, their ability to participate effectively in the governance process later on in life. I believe that for young professionals, we need to ensure adequate mentoring schemes are in place to assist women as they navigate what could be a very challenging career path. And also I believe that women, especially middle career women, can also come in handy. And I can tell you that in Gambia, we don't lack such people. We have women working in all sorts of prominent national and international organizations who can actually come to the fore and then see how they can help and mentor some of these young girls so that they can fully realize their potentials. And this is also one area where I think Rwanda is really doing well, and I would also like to share the stories there as well. So this is something that I believe we have to make a collective responsibility to create equal opportunities and also a level playing field so that women can realize their full potential. We cannot afford to wait any longer. There is an African proverb which I'm sure you've all heard. If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. This is definitely an incontrovertible fact. Now, another issue that I would also like to talk about is more or less topics around national building. This is also one area that I think we need to seriously think about. Now, one thing that has always bothered me is the question of what really does it mean to be a Gambian? What values are we ready to protect? What values are we ready to really die for? Now, these are things that really I fail to see in the public discourse. And I would even say that such an important question, it's just like any company. Where you start from is to define your mission, vision, and things like that, and which gives you a clear sense of direction. So I believe that this is something that we have to inculcate in the minds of our kids and adults, of course, and even maybe include it in the curriculum, in the school curriculum. I can also see that one of the topics in the panel will be discussing is the role of the diaspora in addressing the capacity challenges that we face. Now, this is important, not necessarily because is important, not necessarily where we are, especially where we are. I think it is extremely coming at the very right time. We need to create a conducive environment for the diaspora to participate in the national building process. Now, there are lots of Gambians living in the diaspora. Today, I can tell you that remittances from the diaspora alone almost account for over 20% of the GDP of the country. It's actually one of the highest in Africa, and we have the highest number of Gambian immigrants living abroad. In relative terms, of course not absolute terms, given the size of our population. Now, it is important that we try to see how we can leverage the power of the diaspora. Not all of us can be here and live in Gambia. In fact, in some cases you find that it's not practical for us to do it, because you find that some people are better off where they are. They will even be able to contribute more resourcefully where they are now. I know that this may sound counterintuitive, but that's the truth, because 20% is really not a small number. So there are people who are better off staying where they are. What is important at the end of the day is for us to create mechanisms whereby people can actually contribute in their respective ways towards the national development agenda. Now, still on the subject of the diaspora, and as the Honorable MC mentioned, I would also like to talk about the lessons that I can share with you from my experience living in Rwanda for the last 12 years. Now, one of the things that really I admire is that the Rwandans are united under the leadership of Paul Kagame. And this is very important. It is very important that, one, we support our leaders and then empower them. Now, sometimes what it means is that not everybody it's God who selects leaders. whoever is a leader, what we need to do is just to support them so that they can deliver for us. Sometimes you can find leaders who are tough, not necessarily because they want to be tough, but they know that that is the right thing for their country at that particular moment in time, or that's basically just the right thing to do. So one of the things I can tell you is very critical is to have good visionary leadership, and it is also very important for us as a people, as a nation, to support our leaders, to empower them so that their tasks can be much easier. Now, another thing that I like about Rwanda is the fact that in terms of doing business, is actually is ranked number 2 in Africa for ease of doing business, and 29th in the world. So in 2018, it jumped 11 places to get this kind of ranking. So doing business in Rwanda is more or less the easiest. There are lots of Gambians who have registered businesses in Rwanda, and they can bear me witness. So it takes barely a day for you to come, register your business, and do what you have to do without any hassles whatsoever. Now, another thing that I have also learned is, for anything to happen in a country, peace, of course, it's very critical. It's something that goes without saying. Rwanda is a very peaceful and orderly country with strict observance of rule of law. Now, one thing interesting you will find is that to bribe the police in Rwanda is a serious criminal offense. If you are caught bribing the police, you might even end up in jail. Now, the bottom line is that laws are meant to be followed, not broken. So when you put a law in place, we all have to follow it. I know that sometimes it's very difficult. We tend to think that laws are there just to impose a nuisance. But the bottom line is we all get used to it, and we end up having a very orderly society. It's extremely very important for us to bear that in mind. So Rwanda is really one place where it is very peaceful, security is excellent, you can conduct your business any time of the day without fear that somebody would attack you and harm you and things like that. Now, also one of the things I like is fiscal discipline. Rwanda is really, from the macro perspective, it has a very strong macro economy. It's one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. In fact, in 2010, the economists ranked it as among the top 10 fastest growing countries in the world. Now, on the physical and monetary side, both physical and monetary frameworks are very sound and designed to support good fiscal discipline. It has a relatively moderate debt to GDP ratio, which, of course, it's very important as far as fiscal discipline is concerned. Now, one of the things that you would find very interesting in Rwanda is this digital wave that is more or less like every government service today is more or less, it has been more or less digitized. Now, for example, if you want to look for a passport, if you want to look for a passport in Rwanda, you don't need to know anybody in migration. All you need to do is go, pick an application form, fill the form, submit all the necessary papers. Now you just submit. And what happens? They'll send you a tracking number, tell you that your application is received. If something is missing, they will tell you this is delaying your application. And what do? You just submit all the papers, and within 3 days, your passport is issued. If you are applying for a visa, like foreigners like us, the same process. Make sure that all your papers are in order, you apply, and when you apply, what happens is like they give you a tracking number. You can even track online to see the progress of your application and the like. And once the application is done and your visa is processed, they will send you an SMS or an email to tell you that you can go and pick your visa. Now, another thing also is tax. You can sit wherever you are sitting in the world. As long as you have internet banking, you can actually pay your taxes anywhere. I mean, this really helps to buttress a compliance culture. Businesses can pay their taxes very easily without going to queue up in the banks and things like that. And also, most of the government services, for example, you're looking for a birth certificate, you just name it. They are actually trying to digitize all the services and put them on a central platform. So what you do is you just go to an internet cafe. It's that simple. Go to an internet cafe, and the rest, people will guide you, of course, and tell you, okay, you want to look for a birth certificate. They give you a reference number, you go to the bank and pay, and the next few days you get your birth certificate or whatever document you are looking at. Now, this is something that I find very important, because for two things. One is, when you digitize, you increase efficiency. What it means is you don't really need very competent people to kind of like to administer these services. What you need is just people who are reasonably competent to them. And also, secondly, which is I think the bigger benefit, is it reduces corruption. It more or less eliminates corruption. You don't need to know anybody to look for any government service. All you need is just know where to go and have a good internet connection, and the rest is history. Now, another thing, of course, also what I like about Rwanda is the fact that women today occupy over 60% of parliamentary seats. It's the highest in the world. Now, I think that is really commendable. And also, one thing that is extremely critical is the concept of one Rwanda. Now, it might surprise you to know that whether you talk about a Hutu or a Tutsi, they all speak one language. They all speak something called Kenya Rwanda. It's one language. But of course, human beings, being who we are, we always look for things that make us look different rather than those that actually unite us. So now what they are trying to do is to promote one Rwanda, one country, which I think is extremely important. And that is something that we can really learn from. Now, I think in the interest of time, I will just close it there. But what I can say is that if you look at a country like Rwanda, which is just emerging from the ravages of the genocide that happened in 1994, if you look at where they are now, I think it gives us the confidence that always, once there is will, there is a way. If we really work hard, we will definitely get where we want to be. There is absolutely no doubt about it. I would like to conclude by emphasizing that there are big tasks ahead of us. And now is not the time for us to slack. We need to really move fast. We can't wait. And I think when it comes to matters of national interest, we always have to be guided by sense of patriotism, conscience, and sacrifice. Let's say no to inequality. Let's strive to be better than what we are today. We are one country and one people. Let's definitely be united. In his book entitled No Longer at Ease, Chinua Achebe, the great Nigerian writer, once said, a kinsman in trouble had to be saved, not blamed. Anger against a brother was felt in the flesh and not in the bones. So let's walk as Gambians. Let's be united as one people. And another saying goes, if you want to walk fast, you walk alone. But if you want to walk far, you have to walk together. Long live TAFCON, long live the Gambia.